I mean, really, we have to put together a PowerPoint and act like that's an app and like sell it to somebody. If we can do that, that just is a win for us. So when you're starting out, and you have a great idea, you know, you got to do what you got to do to get it in front of somebody who might give you money. So something like HTML seems simple, but it's actually pretty powerful for you because your presence on the web is the first thing people see, right, with your business. That's the first thing you're going to tell them is go to www.mygreatapp.com. And they're going to go there. And you might not have an app yet, but if it looks like you have an app, they're going to talk to you more, right? So this is kind of the way to get into that. So I'm going to bore you a little bit with the history of what HTML is and the internet and stuff like that. So back in the 60s, our Department of Defense actually developed one of the first internets called ARPANET. A lot of different countries were doing this at that time. This was all about just transferring data between servers, right? In the 1980s, they kind of expanded it beyond just the government, and so educational institutions started to get access to it. Just normal people did. ISPs, internet service providers, started popping up, and by the end of the 80s, they actually, ISPs were taking over for the internet backbone. In 1980, a guy named Tim Berners-Lee worked at CERN, which it's the European Organization for Nuclear Research. I'm not sure they got CERN from that, but that's the name of the organization. He actually created something called Inquire. And what this was, is it was actually the precursor to what would become the World Wide Web. All right? And his idea was just a way to share documents between researchers at CERN. In 1989, he actually proposed what would actually become the World Wide Web. His idea was an internet-based hypertext system. Okay, so now we're talking hypertext, right? That's one of the backbones of what HTML is, hypertext markup language. It's different from the internet though, right? So one of the things I want, and this is just, beside the point, it's not really important to HTML or anything, but internet and www, two different things to some extent, right? Internet is actually just a network of servers. Doesn't have to be the web, doesn't have to be that, it's just a network of servers. The web actually runs, or the www part runs on the internet, and it's basically a browser. It's the fact that you can transfer browser documents between a server and a PC, that's what makes up the actual www, the World Wide Web. All right. Not as important for HTML, but again, Tim Berners-Lee, he actually wrote the specification for HTML, and what that means is he described how browsers should treat an HTML document, how they should read that document and then display it again. So a specification is really important in computer science terms because this kind of creates the rules for how people should treat certain things, like a programming language, or in this case, a markup language. And HTML is not a programming language. A lot of people kind of throw that together like it is. It's not really a programming language. It's called a markup language. And all it really does is describe the contents of a document for the browser. And then just a side note was they decommissioned ARPANET in 1990, so that really doesn't exist anymore as it was. Okay, so how does it work? I know, it's kind of cheesy, cat pictures and all that stuff, right? I mean, it was last minute, I had to do something. All right. So, it would have been better if I actually had a graphical representation of this text instead of just read it to you, but basically, and again, you guys bear with me here. Your computer browser makes a request using your URL. That's the www. Whatever it is. That's the address. Okay, that's how the World Wide Web works, is by using addresses. It makes a request using the URL. That goes out in the network, routes the request to a web server. The web server takes that request, reads it, and then sends back what's called a response. And I purposely capitalize request and response because those are two important pieces of a transaction for a HTML document. The browser asks for the document, that's the request. It also sends along some other information as part of that. And then it gets a response. The response is actually two parts. Part of that is the actual HTML document, and part of it is a set of headers that also tell the browser a little bit more about where it came from and some different information like that. So the response is routed back to your computer, and then your browser parses the response. It takes the HTML, it reads it, there's a whole bunch of information in there that it can deal with, and then it spits out what you end up seeing at the end, like some of the websites we just saw. That's the end product of an HTML document.
How long does that take?
It depends how good you are at HTML, how good you are at compressing your
Generally, how long does that
images,
take?
stuff like that. Well, then it depends on your network too, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, if you have a slow server and a slow network and then a slow computer, it might take 2 minutes to get a response or something like that, right? Generally, you should see something pretty quickly. I mean, the goal has always been, if you're a developer for web applications, is that you get a response in a second or something less, right? But there's a lot of things out of your hand that don't really come into that play, but you can control some of it. So this is what HTML is. It's a set of tags. And this is the markup part. So like, this is a very basic HTML. Not a lot of people know this. You don't even actually have to put a lot of those tags in there to create a web page, and most browsers will still handle it nicely. If it gets something back that's text, that's after the headers of the response, it'll still show it like it's a web page. So, you know, there's a lot more that goes into why you don't want to do that, but in the minimum, you could just do that, and it actually doesn't need to. If you just put an image tag in there, it would actually read it and just show that, right? But these are the primary tags of an HTML document: HTML, opening and closing. There's a couple different pieces to the tags. There are some that have opening and closing. So with this one that has the slash, that's a closing tag. Some of them, like an image tag, don't have to be closed. They're self-encapsulated. They don't have a closing tag. And then some tags have stuff in it, like this. So this is a kind of where the name of the HTML came from. This is a hypertext link, and that's like the backbone of why they developed the internet, or the HTML, sorry, the World Wide Web, which was to exchange these documents that would have hypertext links that would link to other documents, and so it was a way of organizing it. Now we use it for a hell of a lot of different reasons. It has nothing to do with sharing documents and just linking through things. In fact, a lot of people don't even have links, traditional links on their website. They look like buttons now. You know, they don't behave like buttons, but that's how we do it now. So below this, I actually have a little bit more of a, if you wanted to be a little more correct in creating the document, this is a minimal HTML document. It has the HTML opening and closing tags. It has a head section. This does not get displayed to the browser. This is a section that will tell the browser a lot of information about what the document's going to be. Includes what's called a style sheet, which is how nowadays we use a style sheet to make the site look pretty, as opposed to putting it inside of the HTML. We try to keep the HTML more minimal, so it's more of just a structure, a semantic structure, as opposed to what it looks like. Then the body section. This is the most important part. This is what's going to be displayed to the user at the end. All right. So that's about it for my introduction for that part of it. If you brought a computer, we're actually going to go to Code Academy and walk through learning a little bit about it as a tutorial. So if you're interested, if you've never done it before, or if you want to try, or if you just don't want to be bored watching the rest of us do it, take a chance. Oh, so here's another thing you can do that I think is important that people don't realize. On almost any browser, including Internet Explorer, although it's really, I wouldn't recommend doing this on Internet Explorer because it's really bad, but you can look at the source code, the HTML for any document in any browser. Almost every single one of them has a, if you right-click, it has a view page source, and this is what you get. So you can see, now this is a little confusing because this is a much more advanced website than the stuff I was showing you before, but here's your HTML opening tag, buried in some of this other stuff. Here's the head tag that starts, and here's a whole bunch of information that's going to be passed to the browser, including things like this one that says link is a bunch of different types of ones that are links there. Some of them are style sheets, some of them are for RSS feeds, stuff like that. But you can do that in almost any browser, be able to view the source. And even better is most of the browsers, especially Chrome, which is the best one, lets you open up developer tools, which gives you a whole bunch of more information. You can basically look under the covers on this one with developer tools. In fact, I was just reading something that said that the FBI or somebody, one of the way they cracked through to Silk Road was by using view source or developer tools. I mean, seriously, that was an article I was just reading. So, and if that's true, it's incredible, but it's also very possible. I mean, people don't think about even though they're building websites, they don't always think about the fact that anybody can just open up and view the source code and see what's in there. So you got to kind of be careful. Nowadays with our much more advanced websites where we're doing a lot more JavaScript to make it an app, almost like a desktop application. All of that code, that JavaScript code, is actually visible in your browser. It's not like a server application where it just produces something and sends out an end result. JavaScript, if you're building it and you put business logic in there or something, it's there. It's in your source code, so probably not a good idea to do that. You got to kind of be careful. But that's a cool thing nowadays is with these great tools like the Chrome developer tools is you can get a lot of insight to what people are doing. You can look at what other people are doing with their websites and see, basically replicate that kind of stuff. So it's pretty neat. So if you go to Code Academy, I think it's just codeacademy.com. And then I think it's, my browser's so small I can't really see this. I think it's, if you go to the bottom, one says tracks and it's one's HTML, CSS. And if you click on that, you come to this page. We don't have to spend a ton of time in here. You guys get bored, we can stop at any time. But the thing that I'm going to do is just kind of walk through some of the HTML basics. And if you have questions, ask, please, because this is a chance to ask questions. I'm happy to answer anything. But what would be cool is if you haven't done this before and you're just learning, continue on to this part about build your own web page. That was really Claude's goal with this talk, was that people would be able to build their own homepage. And so a good thing to do would be to continue on and do that next one. Code Academy is a really nice site. It's all in browser. You can actually code in the browser, follow along, has a great tutorial. So it's a really good way to learn this, and it's free. You don't even have to sign up. In fact, I'm not signed in, and we'll be able to go through this. You don't have to sign up either. You can just kind of go through the whole thing. It'll bug you to sign up, but you don't have to sign up for it. So you don't have to give away your email or anything else. So, and as Claudia said, without further ado, we'll dive into the HTML basics. So it gives you a little lesson, and you can feel free to go ahead if you get bored listening to me talk about this. I'm not sure how interesting this is going to be to you guys, but this first couple ones, all they want you to do is put this doc type HTML in it to make sure you do it. And again, so this is one of those things where this isn't even a complete document. They put their HTML header doc type on here, and then they just put this tag in there, and that's a valid web page. Web browser will show that. So they're not even showing you a full thing. You can just see where it says free or feel free to change that text. That's a web page right there. You just pulled up a browser web page. So on the next page, all they ask you to do, this is the boring part. We have to push through this first couple things here.